trying to be inspired. I think that that goes a long way with making you and people around you better people. And so I appreciate seeing everyone here in the room. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to Chief Lord.
So this is Kristen Christie. I met Kristen Christie a couple of years ago when I was stationed at Little Rock. A couple things I need you to know. If you do not have Kleenexes, you're probably going to need Kleenexes. This is a powerful story. It's very impactful. I promise you, when you leave this room, you will feel inspired, absolutely inspired. But there are some ebbs and flows in here, and there's some tragic stories and recovery and hope and challenges to how to overcome this. So those that are here for the resiliency, can you please raise your hand? This team, we have a large team. If you, anytime you need to take a break, you want to talk to someone, please grab one, head nod, whatever. If you feel that way, feel free to take a break anytime you want to take a break if you need to. If there's anything you need after this, again, our resiliency team is on hand to speak to you today, tomorrow, anytime you need. Other than that, I think you will enjoy this. I hope it's a tool in your toolbox. My biggest thing I want you to get out, if it's not for you right now, it is a tool in your toolbox that you will be able to use sometime. I promise you, you will be able to use this. I use it in mine all the time, sometime in your career, to help an airman or help a friend or help a spouse, a family member. It is super impactful, and it will relate to everything in your life. So I'm not going to hold you up, and I'm not going to stay in this one. I'm going to leave. And I can tell you, I have only heard bits and pieces of it. Even when she came to Little Rock, I had to leave for other things, and I never got the whole thing. So tomorrow or Sunday, I get to sit through the whole thing. But I have spent many times crying over when watching some of her TEDx and some of her videos, and talking to her too. She's a great help for me when going through struggles, when we have some struggles in our weeks, and she's been there for me for things too. So sit back, enjoy, and hold on. And if you need Kleenexes, I'm sorry, I don't have them to give out.
No, your uniforms. It's camouflage, right? Thank you, Chief. Thank you. So I am a product of the Air Force. I grew up in the Air Force. My dad was intel. We moved every 2 years. And I was fortunate enough to be a European and a Far Eastern brat. And I will tell you that we had some mantras growing up, my younger brother and I, that our parents instilled in us. One, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. If you ask, you have a chance. If you have a chance, take it, and if it changes someone's life, let it. The other one was, don't take no for an answer. And then we got embedded in our community. We heard it over and over, whether it was Omaha, Nebraska, Okinawa, Japan, San Vito, Italy, San Antonio, Texas, Carlisle Barracks, or Colorado Springs. We got embedded in our community. We would get the boxes. We would go through inventory. Whose stuff did we just get? Because it's not our stuff. That's the way the TMO works, right? But then we got settled, and within 2 weeks of arriving at our installation, my brother and I would sit in the back seat with the Rand McNally map. It was way before GPS. And we would tell our parents where to turn. Take a right here, take a left there. We would get lost in our community. Now, if you've been on Okinawa, it's kind of hard to get lost on an island, right? But we got lost in our community to get embedded in our communities. We found the most fascinating places, little holes in the wall, right off the touristy beaten path, and met incredible people. We were ambassadors for the military because so many times they were civilians. They weren't used to the military. And I didn't quite understand why we got embedded in our community, except it was a lot of fun. We got to tell our parents where to go, finally, as kids. And we just had a great time doing it. But something my mom had told me, and it was a saying by the athlete Vernon Law, life is a tough teacher. We get the test first and then we learn the lesson, right? That is so different than when we grow up in school or even PME. We learn the lesson and then we take the test. Whether that's to get certified, whether that's for a promotion. And it was an aha moment for me because life had been pretty darn easy. Until 1983. I was 15 years old, so you don't have to do public math. I'm 39 plus shipping and handling. Expedited shipping and handling, if you will. But at 15 years old, I was a junior in high school. We had just moved to Wiesbaden, Germany. My dad was the wing commander at Lindsay Air Station. My schedule at 15 was wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go to tennis practice, then go to my junior year in high school, and then go to golf practice after school. I'm driven, I'm competitive, and I loved sports. I was an athlete, and I was considered a world-class athlete. I played Steffi Graf the first week in October 1983, and I beat her. She was 14 years old, I was 15, she was 98th in the world, and I was unranked. Do you think that I was on this high, this legal high, right? All that hard work that I put into that, those 4 a.m. practices that I had been doing for years. And then the second week in October, I won the golf championship for all of the American high schools in Germany, all the Dodd schools, and I beat the #1 boy by 5 strokes. I wanted a plaque or a medal for that one. Did I say it was competitive? And then the last week in October, 9 days before my 16th birthday, I had a massive stroke. I was born with a malformed vein in the center of my brain. Life is a tough teacher. I went through a test, and then I learned the lessons. That community that we were embedded in Wiesbaden, and in San Antonio, and Maxwell, and Okinawa, they came together for us. So you all know about Aerovac, right? I mean, that's one of your missions here. My Sunday school teacher in Wiesbaden was a doctor, an Air Force Academy grad, and his roommate at the Air Force Academy was the #1 neurosurgeon in the Air Force. But it was back at Wilford Hall in San Antonio. See, I was at Landstuhl, where they have neurosurgeons for the Army, but it was 6 days after the Beirut bombing of the Marine Corps barracks. They had other priorities besides, by that time, a 16-year-old who needed brain surgery. He was part of our community. Another friend from Sunday school gave us questions on what to ask of the doctors, because my parents didn't know. But they got me Aerovac to Wilford Hall for surgery, 9-hour surgery. Now the prognosis before surgery was, if I lived, I would never walk again. Did I tell you not to take no for an answer, right? I may not be very graceful, and I can't wear heels, but I worked really hard, and it was because of my community. I will tell you that I had physical therapy, occupational therapy. I think the occupational therapist colluded with my mom ahead of time because my occupational therapy was housework. I'm like, come on, I don't want to do that. I did speech therapy, and then one day, as we were driving down the Autobahn at 125 miles an hour, I told my parents I wanted to jump out of the car. My brain worked, but my body wouldn't listen to my brain. It took me 1.5 years to learn to walk again. I write with my left hand now because my right hand, I don't have fine motor movements. But it wasn't just that my body wouldn't listen to my brain, but my identity was misplaced. It was based on what I did, not who I was. It was based on being an athlete, not on my hard-driving, self-disciplined, competitive, I think humorous sometimes. Think about those characters. What is your character? If you're a defender, if you're a maintainer, your identity is not based on what you do. It's who you are. And we go through adversities. And those adversities create endurance or perseverance. And that perseverance creates your character. your identity, if you will. What is your character like? It's not based on what you do, but who you are as a person. And I had to learn that, but I didn't do it alone. It was my community that helped me figure that out. So in a year and a half after the stroke, I walked across the stage to get my high school diploma for the first time without a walker or a cane. And it was an unreal experience. That hard work that I put into my sports, I put into recovery, but not alone, because we were embedded in our community. But my scholarships were taken away. I had scholarships my junior year, but I received a scholarship because I was quote unquote handicapped. I'll take any scholarship I can get. And off to the University of Texas I went, because my dad was a Texas resident. Now when I went in 1985, it was $4 a credit hour. I should have gotten 3 degrees. I missed that opportunity. In 1985, the University of Texas was the largest university population-wise. We had 53,000 students. And I needed to find my community. Now, I will tell you, I'm an uber extrovert. I can walk into the room and suck the air right out of an introvert's lungs if I'm not careful. But even an uber extrovert needed to find a community. I lived on military installations my entire life. I talked in acronyms. My community was found at the ROTC building. Specifically Air Force ROTC, right? We all have different acronyms. I knew AFSC, not MOS. And I wasn't able to raise my right hand to take the oath of service, so I raised my left hand to say I will volunteer. So I actually joined Silver Wings. It was Angel Flight then. And we went to a party my junior year, and there was one person in the room I didn't know. So remember that uber extrovert? Guess what? I made a beeline right to him, and I said, "Hi, I'm Kristen Anderson." He said, "Hi, he stepped back. "Hi, I'm Don Christie. We can never get married." Don't take no for an answer. 5 months later, I had that ring on my finger. There was something in Don's eyes that drew me to him. There was this life and his eyes smiled. And we got married right after he was commissioned. And up to Grand Forks, North Dakota we went. He was a missileer. You've been to Grand Forks or know about Grand Forks is the closest military base to you all, right? Rough winters. I'm sure rough winters here as well. But it was a very small community living on base. We left our front doors unlocked and open even when we went on vacation. We left our garage doors open during the summer. If somebody needed something, we were a community, and we got embedded in that community. And of course, when our military members are gone, TDY, colon alert, that's when the TDY gremlins come out, right? It's our basement, our finished basement flooded when I was 8 months pregnant with our second son, Ben. Don was pulling alert. It was our community, our neighbors that came to help me clean up the basement. But those things happen, right? We left our community for 4 years, and then we got an assignment to Colorado Springs. And we were so excited. It was the first time we bought a house. We were not living on an installation. Now, if you've been to Colorado Springs or know anything about it, we have 5 military bases, okay? But we were proud of being military ambassadors, even though the military infiltrates the whole community. And we loved getting embedded in that new community. Ben was born a month after we were there. Our family was complete with 2 very exuberant boys, very different too. Ryan, musician, Ben, athlete. And they got embedded in their community because we instilled that in them. Those mantras I grew up with. Because as adults, we knew how important it was to have that community. So in just a few moments, I said community, I don't know how many times, but I want to encourage you, you all have a different definition of community. right? It could be your church group, it could be your neighborhood, it could be whatever your unit you're in, your Texas Hold'em group you meet with. Whatever that community looks like for you, I do want you to think about your community and how you're embedded in your community. Because they come alongside of you when you need them the most. So Don came home 2 years after we moved to Colorado Springs, and he said, Kristen, my active duty career is not going the way I want it to. And I think I'm gonna separate. So I will admit, I did not learn my lesson very well when I had the stroke, when my identity was based on being an athlete. Because my identity was also based on having an ID card. I got an ID card when I was 10 years old. I still remember the day. And I went right to the shop bed as soon as it was still warm from the laminator. And I made them card me. And I'm like, I don't know any other way of life. And that's when I learned about the Air Force Reserve. Best of both worlds in our view. And so he joined the reserve as a TR. He was a contractor in the office he was active duty in, and then he went full-time. He helped start up the 310th Space Wing out at Schriever Air Force Base back in the 90s when they were a group. And he thrived on that. And I had heard he was a good leader and all, and I was very proud of him. But he finally got what he wanted in the reserve that he didn't feel like he was gonna get in active duty, and that was a squadron. He was a squadron commander. He was the commander of 19 SOPs that runs the GPS. In fact, it was the largest squadron in all of AFRC. And he was a major. And he came home in 2003 as that squadron commander, and he said, Kristen, I have been asked with getting volunteers to go to Baghdad for a 4.5 months deployment, and I don't feel right asking for volunteers unless my name is at the top of the list. I had heard he was a good leader. I knew that night he was a good leader. A supervisor or manager says go, and a leader says let's go. And he said let's go. He was the only one chosen. And in 2004, he went to Baghdad. He was second in command of the Baghdad airport at Camp Sater. And back then, we didn't have Skype or anything like that. We emailed at night before the boys went to bed. And then typically, most of the time, we had an email from him in the morning before I took the boys to school, telling us about Ted Nugent coming through on a USO tour and signing his gun holster, and meeting Secretary Rumsfeld on the tarmac. But after 4.5 months, he came home different. He came home with the Bronze Star, and I know you don't earn the Bronze Star by having Toby Keith take a nap on your office couch. And there were things he couldn't talk about. And it wasn't clearance related, it wasn't a need-to-know basis, it was just things that he couldn't express. And there were things that I didn't want to burden him with that we went through at home for 4.5 months that he was gone. But we came to an understanding, we called those sacred spaces. But that gleam in his eye that drew me to him that night in college wasn't there. His fingernails were bitten down to the nubs, which was not usual, and he was even more reserved than typical. I used to joke with him, I said, you brought a bad habit back. He called it aromatherapy. Every night he would sit on the back porch, no matter what the weather, and he would smoke that cigar. But that was his time to recharge, and I thought I would give him time. We hear about it during pre-deployment, and during deployment, and post-deployment briefings. We have those resources, right? To give him time to acclimate back. But it was rough. I will say when we were in Colorado Springs in the late 90s, early 2000s, as a reservist, we pretty much figured we were gonna homestead. I've known reservists that spent their entire 20 years in Colorado Springs. We didn't have to move. And then with 5 bases, we figured, so we built a custom home. It was our forever home. The Air Force had other plans. In 2005, he received orders for Army War College. So he asked. He wanted to go in residence. If you don't ask, the answer's no. If you ask, you have a chance. He had a chance. But we had a follow-on to the Pentagon. So we knew we didn't want him to geo-batch it. We wanted to go with him. So we sold our custom home, and we were all psyched for a new adventure. My dad, in the intel world, we went to our Air War College at Maxwell. I remember 6th grade was a wonderful year. That community that we got embedded with, and then the beautiful thing was after 11 months, everyone scattered across the world and we stayed connected. And I thought Army War College was gonna be our saving grace. It was a time to reconnect. And it was. We had a good year, but Don and I still weren't on the same page. He was reconnecting with our boys. But we were set up for our next adventure. We got embedded in Carlisle, and then we were gonna go either to Maryland or Virginia. He was gonna be at the Pentagon. We were gonna have a new community. And then 6 weeks before graduation, Air Force Reserve changed their mind. And they said, we need you back at Air Force Space Command in Colorado Springs. If you don't ask, the answer's always no. As soon as we landed in Colorado Springs, I went to our house, our custom home that we built that we thought was a forever home, and I rang the doorbell and I asked, can we buy our house back? The answer was no. So we found a new community in Colorado Springs. And he had a new job as a director of programs. But I tell you, that move for us was the hardest move. 11 months away from a community, your mindset is you're going to a different community, but our community life went on for 11 months that we were gone. And I likened it to a double Dutch jump rope. You know, you've got 2 ropes going at one time, and you're tracking, right? So you can jump in without tripping, and we tripped. April 21st of 2008, the doorbell rang, and it was the coroner and 2 officers notifying us that Don had taken his life 3 days before he was to Phnom Penh. I remember the first things out of my head, or in my head, my poor boys. Ryan was 14 and Ben was 12. And their dad was their whole world. And I still don't have an answer for them, but the first things out of Ben's mouth was, why didn't he love us enough? I still don't have an answer. He left 7 notes. 7 notes. And not a single question we had was answered. Don's choice has an everlasting effect on our family, but not only our family, because we were embedded in our communities, it affected our communities, and it still does 14 years later. Ben, our 12-year-old, our youngest, on his 20th birthday, 8 years after his dad died, he was at the University of Arizona in Tucson, and he left me this voicemail. can't live without my dad. He left that voicemail at 1:30 in the morning. That's why I didn't answer. My cell phone was off. I don't turn off my cell phone anymore. Ben attempted suicide that night. But his roommates and his fraternity brothers came alongside of him, and they came alongside of me in Colorado Springs. They got him the help he needed. He was on a 72-hour hold. He still has rough times, but his community came alongside of him. This is what I have from our oldest son, Ryan. We are not having technical difficulties. Ryan has been missing for 2,393 days today. 6 years, 7 months, 19 days. He was 14 when Don died. His doctors feel like the suicide triggered bipolar in him early. He was 16 when he was diagnosed. He got into meth and heroin. He ran away. We got him the help that he needed with the help of our community, and he got clean and he started his own business. And one day he said, "Mom, I need to go to Hawaii just for 4 months. There's this program there. I want to get embedded in that community. I need a fresh start." We found out later he never went, he never applied. He has not used his social security number nor his passport in those 6 years, 7 months, 19 days. He's off the grid. So I stand on a firm foundation of faith and I pray that my son is on this side of heaven. I just don't know. But these are after effects of a choice that Don made. Whether he didn't want to be a burden, whatever that was, I told you his notes did not explain, did not tell us or give us answers to the questions that we had. And this is what's left of our family. Both of my kids attempted, and there's research that says if someone has a loved one who died by suicide, they're more likely to attempt. And our kids were a statistic in that. And I'm not a counselor. I don't have letters behind my name. I feel like it's me and overcoming, and I wish God wouldn't trust me so much. But for us, suicide was contagious in our family. But I want to talk about what else is contagious, and I'm not talking COVID, right? A smile can be contagious. A kind word can be contagious. It's amazing. I mean, I'm smiling right now, and I see a number of you start smiling, and I feel good. I'm holding my shoulders back a little bit more and holding my head up high. It's amazing what a smile, and it doesn't take any time, any effort, really. There's a saying, it takes nothing away from a burning candle to light another candle. It takes no wax, no wick, no fire. I think of Christmas Eve service with one lit candle, we all have the candles and we light, and the entire room is illuminated. That's what a smile can do for someone's life, because life is an emotional battlefield, and we don't know what our battle buddy, our wingman, is going through on that emotional battlefield. And there's no room for strangers on this battlefield. There's no room for silence on this battlefield. How can you be contagious? A friend of mine told me a few years ago that when he meets new people, he assumes that they are having the worst day of their life, because we don't know, right? And he wants to bring a little sunshine into their life, and it might be sharing a smile with someone or using someone's name. You all have name tags, right? Or think of your customer service people that have name tags. Using their name, watch them light up. It's the name that their parents gave them. You're seeing them as a human being. never know what they're going through in life. So we live in a world of acronyms, right? So these are a few of the acronyms that I go to help in reframing and help me get through some of the dark times. And I know there are going to be more tests in life, right? All the time, whether it's a pop quiz, a midterm, or a final. And I'm not asking you to compare your adversity with my adversities. But you've all experienced a 10 out of 10 on the pain scale, right? And it may not last for very long, but in that moment, in that raw moment of your test, it feels like 10 out of 10. But these acronyms helped us get through that, and I still use them. So no, as leaders, you all have to say no sometimes, right? And sometimes no means no, especially when it comes to your body. But it also means next opportunity. But I am saying no means no when it comes to your body, okay? Other words, relationships, career, it means next opportunity. And as leaders, when you have to give the answer no, you don't know what that airman is going through, or you're, the person that you're supervising. And sometimes that no is a gut punch, and they can't see past that no. Whether it's they have to change AFSCs. Remember, a lot of times they have their identity based on what they do, not who they are. And as leaders, to spend a little bit of time helping them find that next opportunity is so important. It helps arm them for the next battle on that emotional battlefield. So no means next opportunity, except when it comes to your body. No means no. So the next one, fly. First, love yourself. We talk about self-care, right? I had a chance to talk to some of the helping agencies and the resilience team this morning. Because we're wingmen, because we're there for other people, whoever that is, whoever your community is, you have to take care of yourself first. We hear it on the airplane, right? Put your oxygen mask on before you help others. It's better to give of your overflow than your overwhelmed. I have given of my overwhelmed before, and it was crap, right? You want to give the best of yourself to help others, but you have to take care of yourself first. But we talk about service before self, right? But without a firm foundation for that self, the service is no good. So fly. First, love yourself. What recharges you? We have 1,440 minutes in every day. That's a given. Every 4 years, we get an extra day. How much of that time, every single day, do you spend on yourself? I encourage you today to take a look at that and carve out whatever percentage of that time for yourself to recharge, to build that self foundation, and it's not selfish. You need to do it. And when you can fly, you can fight and win. In the mission, in life, in your career, in your relationships. The poor Army doesn't quite get this one. But fly, fight, win, right? Fly. First, love yourself. This is my acronym, JOMO, for 2022. What does FOMO mean? Fear of missing out. Joy, exactly, you got it. Joy of missing out. Boundaries. What are your boundaries? You all, as leaders, have a lot on your plate, right? What can you take off of your plate to give to a junior airman that you feel confident that gives them the mentorship that they need? They can make a decision whether it's right or wrong, and it doesn't affect your mission, right? But give that to them. What are things that you feel like you're right? Using all that energy to oar upstream. When you can take your hands off the oars and go downstream. And it's so much easier. Work can be a 4-letter word, right? Like some of those 4-letter words I'm not going to say. But work can also be a 4-letter word like life, love, play, golf. What other 4-letter words that are positive, right? And it's what you make it. But JOMO, what is your boundary? What are things you can take off your plate? And the beautiful thing about that is sometimes you have to say no because it's your boundary, and that means next opportunity for someone else to come into your place. Whatever that is that you say no to, a volunteer opportunity, right? You're giving someone else the opportunity to learn and grow and become a leader. Boundaries. What can you take off your plate and delegate to someone else and help them grow? PTS. We know that Dawn came back with post-traumatic stress. We know that my boys and I have been diagnosed with secondary PTS. But we also know you don't have to be on the battlefield to experience it. But I want to encourage you that PTS in our world, and those of you, I'm sure, who've learned those lessons, stands for post-traumatic strength. We learn those hard lessons, right? You've heard the saying, what doesn't kill you hurts like hell, and then makes you stronger, right? Or this too shall pass. It may pass like a kidney stone, but it will pass. But we get stronger. We go through those adversities, the endurance and perseverance that's created from those adversities, and those affect our character, right? And that creates hope. But we get stronger. If you think about going to the gym and you lift weights, which I obviously don't. My size is TLC, thick like cheesecake, or thick like cornbread, whichever region you're from. But when you pick up those weights and you break those muscles, they grow back and they're stronger, and you go back and you do it again, and you break and they get stronger. And what's the strongest muscle in our body? It's the heart. Every time I hear that voice now, my heart breaks and it grows stronger. And I can say, because of the trials, because of the tribulations, because of the adversities and the challenges and the tests, I'm stronger for it. And because of that, I can help tutor people through those lessons. I can't always be there for their tests, right? We can't always be there when they go through those pop quizzes. But we can help navigate through those tests, or through those lessons, because we have post-traumatic strength. Fail. I feel like I failed as a mother and as a spouse and a lot of other things. And it was my community that helped me understand FAIL stands for first attempt in learning, or further attempt in learning, never final attempt in learning, right? The Airman's Creed, the very last sentence, I will not fail. That was hard for me to read because I think failing is a learning experience, right? We are gonna fail. We are not gonna fail our fellow airmen. If we fail together. We learn those lessons together. We help tutor each other through those lessons, through that emotional battlefield. It's okay to fail, right? Accelerate change or lose. Well, when you accelerate change, guess what? You're gonna fail, but that's okay. You get back up and you try something new. First attempt in learning or further attempt in learning. Fear. False evidence appearing real, right? If I asked you all to share what you're fearful of, I bet the majority of you would have different answers. Because of our frame of reference, right? But it takes a battle buddy or a wingman to come alongside and help remove those blinders to get over our fears. When we when do we grow? We grow when we step outside of our comfort zone. And outside of our comfort zone is usually a fear. And it takes our community to help us over those. And I'm not asking you to be fearless as in one word. I don't think that's obtainable. Because again, you've got to have some fear, and when you learn new things that you're fearful of, maybe, that's when you grow. That's when you get strong. And you make a bigger impact in your community, in your sphere of influence. So I'm asking you to just fear less. 2 words. Do something this weekend that you didn't think about doing or you don't want to do. And it doesn't have to be, anything major, right? It's making a phone call to someone that you put off calling. Whatever that looks like, just something, a baby step. Free. Foster relationships energetically everywhere. Now, I'm not asking you to be Tigger bouncing into a room, right? It could be crossing someone in the hallway like for 2 weeks at a time and finally saying hi. Or finally stopping and saying, hey, we've seen each other for the last 2 weeks. I thought I would introduce myself. That's fostering a relationship. It's getting embedded in your community. It doesn't have to be a room full of people. It could be over the counter with the barista at Starbucks, using their name because they have a name tag on, right? And fostering that relationship. So my kids had homework the very first day of school. Well, it was schoolwork that they had to bring home. Every first day of school, they had to come home and tell me either a custodian's name or someone from the lunchroom's name. And their instructions were to find out their name and say, thank you, Mrs. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Watley. In 4th grade, our youngest son, Ben, came home. He said, Mom, I know why you want me to use Mrs. Smith's name. I said, why is that? Because she gives me more food. I said, that's a benefit, but really what I'm showing you is to foster a relationship with someone who sometimes doesn't feel seen, right? We have people in our communities that sometimes don't feel seen. And when you use their name and you say thank you and you foster that relationship with them, 1, you make them feel great. 2, you feel great. It's contagious. And sometimes you get more food. Foster relationships energetically everywhere. And then hope. Hope has 2 meanings. The first is hold on, pain eases. Some people will say that E stands for ends. Even when we find my son, our pain won't end. But it's okay. And it ebbs and flows. Anniversaries, birthdays, those milestones. But we have people in our community to help the pain ease. And when it says hold on to your community. Hold on to whatever your community looks like, because there are people that want to help you. We have your resilience team. I haven't asked them, but I betcha they want people to call them. They are trained. You want people to reach out, right? And ask you for help, because it gives us a sense of purpose. And so the other definition of hope is help one person every day. And the beauty of this is when you have pain that needs to ease and you help one person every day, it helps your pain ease. You're holding on to someone else's life experience and you're helping them. I would much rather clean someone else's house than my house. I don't know about you all, right? So when I need my pain ease, that's when we volunteer. The boys went through such a tough time, and Ryan, our oldest son, loved to cook. So he decided to make dinner once a week for our local fire department. He made the most, he did not get his cooking from his mama. I rocket hamburger helper. I don't know where he got it from, but he used a skill that he had to help other people. And that helped his pain ease. He had a purpose. He had a project. But I want to encourage you that sometimes that one person you need to help is yourself. Go back to Fly. Go back to Jomo. It's okay if you need to help yourself. And we ask people when they're in crisis to reach out, right? To ask for help. I'm asking you, when you're in a good place, be a noticer. If you notice that someone is not doing well, and your gut and your heart and your head will tell you something's up, be compassionately intrusive. And that means go up and say, hey, how about if we go to Starbucks to grab some coffee? Get them outside, get them engaged. Have you ever asked someone, how are you doing? And what's the typical answer? Fine. Fine is an acronym sometimes for feelings inside not expressed, right? Your gut, your heart, your head will tell you when something's up. Spend a little time with that person because they need you. They are not in a place to ask for help. They need you to extend a hand to them. And it doesn't have to be overt, but just spend some time. My youngest son was working in a squadron. He's a government employee at Edwards Air Force Base, and the commander, the lieutenant colonel, realized Ben was not doing well. And he said, Ben, come with me. And they went out in an empty parking lot and they threw a baseball for 20 minutes. They didn't talk. They just threw a baseball. And Ben was getting his anger and frustration out by throwing that baseball. 20 minutes. That lieutenant colonel, that squadron commander, took 20 minutes out of his time. Ben was 24 at the time. He helped one person every day. He helped my son, and thus he helped this mama when he did that. It takes a little bit of time. So these are the two that help my pain ease. My husband Sean, we met on Match.com. It works. And he was Navy Reserve when we met. So I'm an Air Force recruiter. He is in the Air Force Reserve. He is cyber at Peterson Space Force Base. I said, I love you, but I don't understand your acronyms. You gotta come over to the Air Force. But Sean's brother was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. His mom was a psychiatric nurse for 40 years. Do you think Sean understood when Ryan was diagnosed with bipolar? Absolutely. He helped our pain ease. And I don't know many spouses who can live in the shadow of a previous life. I talk about my first husband. I talk about those experiences. I travel all the time. And he supports what I do. He helps my pain ease. And this has been my 26-year-old at Edwards Air Force Base. He's working on the B-52 retrofit. He's an aerospace engineer. Now, if you've ever been out to Edwards Air Force Base, there's not a whole lot for a 26-year-old to do. But he has gotten embedded in his community. He lives in Lancaster, California, and mainly working from home right now. So he's meeting people out in the community. And I'm very proud of him, and he came to me when he was 22, and he said, Mom, I hear you. I understand HOPE stands for Hold On Pain Eases, and you have helped my pain ease throughout it all. So, who in your community, who is the person that helps your pain ease? And who do you help their pain ease? Think about that. Reach out to those. Just let them know you appreciate them being here. So what did our community do for us? Right? Because tests are gonna happen. Tragedy is gonna happen, right? They showed up. 14 years ago, I know every single person who was in my living room and my kitchen. I made one phone call after the coroner and those officers left. And my kitchen and living room were full of people. I remember the odors and aromas that night. I remember the sound of the doorbell. I had to change the sound of our doorbell because every time it rang, it triggered, right? Now I have ho, ho, ho all year long. We love Christmas time. But our community showed up. And then they did something. Each one of them did something. Sometimes it was just being there, standing against the wall, or someone was cleaning the dishes in the sink. My best friend took her 2 boys, who were my boy's best friend, out of school for 3 days after Don died. And she slept on Don's side of the bed so it wouldn't be empty. She showed up and she did something. I had a friend from Army War College who lived in Florida. She didn't call, she didn't ask. A week after we buried Don, she shows up on my front doorstep with her suitcase. She showed up, she did something, and then they were intentional. The first 30 to 45 days, people were attentive, checking in with us. We had food, we had to borrow our neighbors' freezers, for the food. It was made with love. We had cards, we had text messages. 3 weeks after Don died was Mother's Day, and who buys gifts for mom when you have 2 young boys? Dad does. I had flowers delivered to the house on Mother's Day. People were attentive, and then life goes on. It's okay, but we had a few friends who would still check in on us, and it wasn't just on the milestones and anniversaries. It was just, they were intentional. So I have homework for you all. I know you thought you were just gonna be able to sit here, right? I'm not asking you to do it right now, but today, I want you to text someone. Text someone who helps your pain ease. Text someone who you haven't talked to in a while, but they've been on your heart. Or scroll through your contact list like I do every morning. I stop, it's like throwing a dart at your contact list. And I text 2 people every morning. And I do wingman check-in or battle buddy check-in. And I ask them, what made you smile yesterday? If I ask them what made them smile today, I don't want them to come back and say, well, your text made me smile. But they have to think. Sometimes they have to really dig deep on what made them smile. They have to hunt for the good. Or just ask them, hey, tell them, I was thinking of you today. But put your name on it in case your contact is not in their contact list. And the majority of you will get a text message or even a phone call back. Hey, I really needed that today. And they may tell you a lesson that they're learning from a recent test on this emotional battlefield. And you may not be able to help them, but guess what? You may have gone through that same test or something similar. Or someone in your sphere of influence in your community could help them. So it's the honor system, but text someone today. And then use your resources. No matter what installation you're in, no matter what city you're in, you have resources. And the best time to find out what your resources are when you first get to a location and when you're in a good place. And put those resources in your cell phones. They aren't only for you when you're in crisis or in need. They're for you when someone you care about needs you to come alongside of them because they can't get out of that victimness. So this is national, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's 10 digits, 800-273-TALK. A lot of people remember the last 4 TALK because they spell talk, right? They also have a text line. And this number, many people don't realize, this is the same number for the Veteran Crisis Line and the Military Crisis Line. You just dial 1 to reach someone who has the cultural understanding of our military and veteran community. So in 2017, I went to my senator and I said, we have a 3-digit number for medical emergencies, 911. Can we have a 3-digit number for mental health emergencies? In 2020, 3 years later, it passed the House, it passed the Senate, and was signed as an executive order. July 16th of this year, 988 will route to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. 3 digits. 988. I don't know if it would have helped Dawn 14 years ago, but I was willing to put in the effort and hear the no's and find that next opportunity to break down that barrier. So July 16th of this summer, just a few weeks from now, that will be active. And you will still be able to dial 1 to reach the Veteran Crisis Line or the military crisis line. So these are some of your resources. If you've got a phone, please snap a picture. We have hard copies. I'd like you guys to have hard copies. These are your resources here. And we've got Kelly here, Rita's here, we've got chaplains here. So, I mean, these are your resources for your community right here. And when you leave, or when you retire or separate, your community, whatever city you're in, has resources for you. Find out what those are. A lot of states have 211. Now, those resources are not just for mental health, right? They're financial resilience, relationship, whatever that looks like. And Rita, you see family members as well. These are wide open resources for you. The chaplain's office, 100% confidential. You need to talk to someone and you're afraid that you're gonna lose your firearm? Go to a chaplain. They're non-reportable. Now, if you see a chaplain walking down the street, please thank them for what they do. Can you imagine? But 100% confidential. That's important. Military OneSource. So I use Military OneSource. I had a military spouse who didn't speak English very well. She had a robust resume. I mean, she spoke English well, but the written word, she gave me her resume in Spanish, and Military OneSource, they have 150 translators, languages that they can translate to English. Her resume was beautiful, and she got the job. I mean, so I'm not talking just mental health resources here, right? A lot of it are. Do you think of the outdoor rec and the gym as a resource? It is, for those who like to exercise. I like to play golf, that's exercise. And then your violence prevention integrator, and Mike, I'm sorry I didn't get your stuff up, but it'll go up next time. So he's right here, right here. Key spouses, I'm a key spouse for my husband's squadron. We are a resource. We are part of the command team, but we go through training to have those tools and help you figure out where to go. And it's okay to say, I'm calling for a friend and mean it, right? We understand. Your Sark, Elizabeth. And then give an hour. Give an hour started for the reserve. It was specifically for how many resources are for active duty and not the reserve, right? We feel a lot. Things are opening up. Air Force Aid Society now supports the reserve and National Guard with grants, not just loans. But give an hour, we used it. You go to the website, type in your zip code, and it will come up with providers who have donated an hour a week for a year to help. But Military OneSource. But I really encourage you, your resilience team here, they understand the reserve community, they understand the Minneapolis-St. Paul community, and they want you to call them. So use your resources. And here's a matrix that's available for, these are your resources. Now it's really hard to see, I understand that. I think You can get hard copies of this. But look at all these helping agencies. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And they're there for you. So I want to talk about one of the resources Ben used. As a senior in high school, he played football, he wrestled, and he was in track. He didn't go to scholarship to college for any of those, but that was really his outlet to help with his anxiety and depression. His counselor, his senior year, asked him, "You're going to college, but not on a scholarship. What are you going to do to help your anxiety and depression?" He didn't quite know. He was taking aerospace engineering, didn't know if he would have time for intramural sports. So the girl he liked his senior year was starting a crochet club before school. And Ben joined the crochet club. He learned to crochet, and then he went off to college and he became a closet crocheter when he joined a fraternity. He did not want his fraternity brothers to know that he crocheted. So his last semester was February of 2019. He was graduating in May of 2019. We were hoping and praying. He was taking 20 credit hours of aerospace engineering. He was waiting for his clearance. He had put in his EQIP his sophomore year because he had an internship with a defense contractor. He was honest about his attempts, about his 72-hour holds, and it had been almost 2 years, and he was still waiting for the clearance. And he was trying to graduate. So you can imagine he was crocheting a lot to help with his anxiety. Well, he had a girlfriend, and he crocheted a halter top for her. And she broke up with him before he could gift it to her. So he calls me, and he says, "Mom, I've gone viral." And I said, "Honey, urgent care is right there on campus. It's okay." He says, "No, I've gone viral on Instagram and Twitter." And I said, so since she broke up with him before he could gift it to her, he puts it on, he snaps a picture, he sells it for $45. This is the young woman who bought it from him. She wore it best. And I said, "Honey, what's the problem?" "Mom, I have 500 orders for halter tops." He says, "What am I going to do? This hobby I took up to help me with my anxiety is causing me more anxiety." So we talked about it. He ended up teaching his fraternity brothers how to brochet. Words matter, right? This is silver, not gray. He taught them how to brochet. They fulfilled all 500 orders. Between them, they made $22,000. I made Ben pay his own tuition that quarter. I said, "You should have gone into business instead of aerospace engineering." But this is just a funny example of using one of his resources. He dug deep to find that. He still crochets. His fraternity brother, they get on a Zoom once a month and they crochet together. And Mother's Day is Sunday, and I can't wait to get home and find out what he crocheted for me. For the last few years, I've had something, and he's gotten really good at it. But he used his resources. So we have over 1,500 celebrations throughout the year, right? Today, National Military Spouse Appreciation Day. Please, if you have a spouse, go home and tell your spouse thank you. From one military spouse to another, but from you as well. You've heard my story, right? As a military spouse, I served. You either raise your right hand to take an oath, or you take a vow. And we serve in our own capacity. And it's National Space Day. So I take up space a little too much. I'm trying to, lose some weight. But it's not, we have, actually today is 12 celebratory things just today alone. We don't have a National Survivors Day or a National Resilience Day. And this morning, as we said, National Resilience Day should be every day, right? But if it has to be one day, I've been working for 10 years on getting it as March 4th, because we march forth and conquer our insecurities and our disappointments and our self-limiting belief. If you had a friend who talked to you the way you sometimes talk to yourself, how long would that person stay your friend? That's convicting to me. But can you read that for me? What does this say? Just say it out loud. I am resilient. You are resilient. When you see this, your brain says, I am resilient. You are. Sometimes we have to dig deep. We aren't resilient necessarily on our own. We aren't born resilient, right? There's skills to learn and master, just like a foreign language or cooking skills that I still need to master. But life is a tough teacher. Brutal teacher, cruel teacher. We get the test first and then we learn the lesson. We learn that lesson on this emotional battlefield where there's no room for silence and there's no room for strangers. But we are all armored up for our battle buddy and our wingman to march forth and conquer together. Thank you. Thank you. So usually, people aren't comfortable necessarily asking questions in a big group. So what I do, I'm here for the next 3 days until Sunday. If you'd like to talk, we've got resilience, the resilience team here as well. But I appreciate you all being here, whether you were voluntold or not, I don't know. But I want to be a resource for you too. So this is my information. If you have my business cards, and I do have business cards up here, or contact cards. Again, I'm not a therapist, I'm not licensed in anything, but I want to be your emotional support human if you need one, and I'm available. So I really appreciate you all being here.